Folks, happy Friday and welcome to the Freedom from the Press podcast. My name is Jason Robertson. I'm here with my partner in crime.
Good morning, folks. Todd Peterson. Happy Groundhog Day. Side note, might be a top 5 movie of all time, Jason.
Oh my God. You know, it's funny you say that because I think that it is really remarkable that how much stuff just repeats itself. You know what I mean? And it's funny because this week's episode, we're talking about fake news. And folks, there are stories that our media should cover, and they either completely ignore it or the way they cover it is designed to manipulate you to feel a certain way. And Todd, I'm going to dedicate this week's episode to my high school English teacher, Mr. Doug Yost.
Mr. Yost, wherever you are, thank you.
Mr. Yost, wherever you are. So the story behind that is Mr. Yost, I post the Rumble link on my personal Facebook page, and every week he chimes in. So this dude, when I was back in high school, and I'm an old man now, I'm almost 50, he was a hippie, and he was government's corrupt and all the stuff that you tagged with the hippies. Well, now, however old he is, 70 years old or 80 years old, he is so deep with his head up the butt of the government and the media. I'll post something like the Carrie Lake episode last week, and I'm like, this was a huge story. How is this not front page news? There was RNC was bribing Carrie Lake to not run for Senate. They offered her a job on a board of directors, name your price. And he comes out and he's like, oh, that's fake news. That's and he just watches CNN and MSNBC and that's all he gets his news from. And then he asked about the Trump case, the Jeannie Carroll case. And I'm like, we're not going into that on this episode, but if you dig under the hood on that case is complete, hot, utter garbage. But all he does is watch the clips on CNN and he thinks, oh, life is normal. So this week, folks, we got a huge ask for you. The way we take back this country is to get people out of the mainstream media news cycle. For those of us who are President Trump supporters, he helped wake us up in 2016 to how corrupt the government is, how corrupt our media organizations are, all that stuff. And we represent about half the Republican base. There are normal Democrats on the other side of the aisle that also need to be woke up. I'm not talking about the crazy leftist cat lady who, got her 12th abortion. She's gone. But your neighbor who you help snowplow their driveway and they keep an eye on your house when you're traveling, those people need to see things like we're going to show you today. So I'm going to ask not just to like, comment, and share, but share it with somebody you might not politically agree with. Say, hey, take a little time, listen to these clowns, see what they have to say. Todd, thoughts on that?
It's funny you say that. We've just been putting up a couple of videos. So I'm going to reference some celebrities, and it's not because I fawn over them or really care what they think, but I think they're a good example for how you can open up your mind and be willing to new ideas. So someone like a Russell Brand recently converted to Christianity in a sense. He's wearing a cross on his neck now. He said, I'm really open to the ideas of Jesus being the savior. Joe Rogan has talked about being a leftist his entire life, more of a liberal, but he said the Democrat Party is insane. If you are intellectually honest, you might be left-leaning. You might hold classically liberal ideas that might have aligned with the Democrat Party 50, 60, 70 years ago. But if you're being honest with yourself and you do a little bit of self-reflection, you have to come to the conclusion that your values are not in alignment with the values of the party that you're still voting for. We hate Republicans as much as Democrats. Once you go to DC, you are part of the regime, the establishment. There's no difference. However, from a philosophical standpoint, voting Democrat, it just doesn't work anymore. You are sacrificing a lot of your own morals and principles to give them your vote. And so, like Jason said, share this with people that you don't necessarily agree with, because these are the people we have to wake up to save the country. Jason, myself, if you're watching the show, you see the path America's on and you know it needs to be saved. But, we're Republicans. We only get one vote. So our vote, we changed our minds. That's all we can do. But we got to go get more votes out there now. And it's going to take changing the minds of that neighbor who probably a good person, good husband, good father, good coworker, whatever it may be, but he's not a good voter still. So let's go get his mind now.
Well, yeah, and I got to say, too, for Republicans or people that were on the right, we have to do, or we went through this transformation that we need to challenge our friends on the left. Because I tell you what, 2012, 2013. I mean, just go back pre-Trump coming down the escalator. We were the first ones to defend the country club establishment Republican Party. And every time there was a war, we were Lindsey Graham going, oh, we need to go defend her. Let's send our boys over there to die. We bought all the crap. And part of why I love President Trump is he woke us up. And he said, no, this Republican Party is not serving your interests. They are not serving your values. They are not taking care of what you do. And actually in the chat, we already got people chiming in. Daniel Mendenhall, welcome to the podcast, Dan. We're going to be here for an hour. We hope you ride along with us.
Jason, I got to say, it's a great picture. I don't know if AI did that, but Trump is the Joker. It still makes me laugh. But Daniel, welcome to the show. Thanks for chiming in here. And look, if we say something you disagree with, let us know. I don't know if saying lock his fat ass up is going to engage in really important dialogue, or we're certainly not going to change our minds if that's all you put. And, we hope to change your mind here. So stick around for the next hour.
Yeah, and I got to say, preview for Daniel, we're going to talk about January 6th because I guarantee you've been mind controlled, mind warped by January 6th.
Oh, so, Jason, I wish we had this graphic. Daniel, what hoaxes do you still believe? I'm just curious. Do you believe that Trump said there's fine people on both sides and praised neo-Nazis? Do you think he said we should take bleach during the pandemic? Which one do you still believe? I'm curious. There's so many Trump hoaxes. Did he collude with Putin to win the election in 2016? I just want to know where you're coming from, Daniel.
Daniel believes all of those things. I can just tell. And actually, shout out to Glenn. Thanks for tuning in, Glenn. You hit the nail on the head. All you have to do is see what's going on and who is doing it. That's all. And that's what we're going to talk about, because when you start to see it, you can't unsee it. And that's why we're at such a pivotal point in the nation. But I tell you what, Todd, there's hope. And we're going to start out today's episode going over a clip that Dave Rubin had Dr. Drew on his show. And once again, this isn't an endorsement of Dave Rubin or Dr. Drew, but Dr. Drew, I thought, really put it pretty eloquently. So we're going to kind of start with that so that we can frame up kind of what it is we want to accomplish today.
All right, let's take a look.
Did your political evolution shift because of the COVID craziness? Because when I had you on last time in studio, it was still in LA, so it's about over 2.5 years ago, you were still sort of saying some nice things about Fauci, and I know you guys have a history. I sense you've shifted a bit on that, or at least you're amenable to some other ideas.
I am open to everything now. I'm open to things that I never thought I would have been open to. And I really think that the door fully came open. I've realized that everything in the news is BS. Everything. There is nothing that I can consume on any legacy media that I can trust. And that is shocking, and that's disturbing. And it makes you wonder how long it's been going on for. And I'm concerned it might have been a very long time.
Yeah. Was there a straw that broke the camel's back on that specifically?
Yes. Yeah. I was going to tell you that my interview with my first interview with RFK Jr., he was so reasonable and so smart and so many interesting ideas and enlightened me to this cozy relationship between the regulators and the pharma companies, which I really wasn't aware of. I mean, I can't let a pharma company representative into my office to give me a pen with a drug name on it, and yet those guys are living together and cross-pollinating jobs. I mean, that's mind-boggling to me. Yeah. So, and that he had a very sensible, didn't necessarily fully agree with it, but a sensible idea about vaccine research that he would like to push forward. Not that vaccines are bad. His family's all vaccinated. My family's all vaccinated. And at the end of that interview, he said something to me. I've met him now many times since then. He goes, "Oh my goodness, Drew, you are so courageous to talk to me." And I thought, it blew me back in my chair. I thought, I need courage to have a conversation with an adult in a public setting.
It's funny, Jason. I'm letting that moment kind of sink in. And I had referenced earlier Rogan, Russell Brand. Add this gentleman to the list too. And it's interesting. It's why all of these celebrity types are having that awakening, Jason, but maybe regular Democrat voters are or are not. We see a lot of red pilling. We see a lot of walk away stuff here, but I find it fascinating that all of the people in his position here are more open-minded to these changes than maybe just regular, CNN viewers are.
Well, yeah, and Dr. Drew, I'll be honest, I don't even know what his political affiliation is. I don't know what his
I don't even
background is.
care.
I don't really care, but he typifies kind of what we're battling against with this regime, which is you can't even have conversations with people with different viewpoints. You can't even be open to their ideas. You just can't do that. And COVID should have been a wake-up call for millions and millions and millions more people. Because if you look at when we were going through the pandemic, you couldn't even talk about things like ivermectin. They called it horse paste on mainstream media. And I mean, and like I say, Dr. Drew really sums it up pretty well. Should we finish the clip?
Let's do it.
And he was right. This is a time where I didn't realize how much speech was being suppressed, how much was being manipulated, how much. Then what happened after that was the Twitter files, and they started seeing what's going on. And it's just been to me this is all reprehensible. And what has happened as a result, I don't think I've shifted my political views. I'm just really I never imagined I'd be in this point in my life at this age and place in my career. Freedom and freedom fighting and the courage to stand up for it have been the most important thing in my life right now. And that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He made another comment here. This is what I was trying to get at before. He is changing his mind because he is having conversations. And Jason, this is our message every week. Share this with people that probably don't hear what you and I are saying ever, because people live in their echo chamber, and we can be guilty. I follow certain people on Twitter. I'm usually just exposed to that. But the echo chamber is real, especially for these leftists that think they are better than God or that they are their own gods, and then they know every right answer. And so why would they take the time to talk to an RFK Jr.? Why would they take the time to listen to this podcast, whatever it may be? But once you start having those conversations and someone just asks you a question, that's when the ball gets rolling, because you realize you don't have a good answer to defend leftism anymore.
Well, yeah, and Dr. Drew's funny too, because he's talking about an interview he had with RFK Jr. I like RFK Jr. I think many of his political opinions and thoughts are trash. I don't necessarily agree with his policy prescriptions, but if you ever listen to him talk and try to say, like, why do you feel the way you feel? The guy's really intelligent. He used logic to reach his conclusions. You know, they like to frame him as an anti-vaxxer, when no, his concern is that we haven't done studies on the long-term ramifications. And coincidentally, when we started ramping up the vaccines, or when a lot of things like autism started, he's like, shouldn't we ask that question? Shouldn't we look to see if there's any comparison between the two? And Dr. Drew was funny, because if you go back 2-3 years ago, Dr. Drew was living in the bubble. He was living in.
He was pushing all the messaging from Fauci. He was right there with them. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Jason, you said earlier, I can't believe COVID wasn't a wake-up call. I don't think I've been more disappointed, even though I never get my hopes up for elections, because there's too many people voting at this point. But how 22 wasn't a referendum on COVID policies will never cease to amaze me. I'll just use Minnesota as our example here. Tim Walz shut down the state. He let people out of prison, and then he put new people in there that weren't abiding by his dictatorial mandates. And people seem to be okay with that. The mandates to go to work in some places, the inability to leave your house, and people just forgot all about it. And certainly by now, I don't even think that's on people's radars. They forget how insane things got and how insane they were towards other people. I have family members that uninvited me from holidays like Easter and Thanksgiving, and now they just talk to me as if nothing ever happened, and try to bring it up, and they're just like, I don't want to go there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, think of that. There were people, I was somebody who did not get the vaccine. I didn't like the science. I didn't trust it. And I had my own reasons. And you know what? I live in America. I get to choose that. I actually got COVID and nearly died. And I still wouldn't go back and take the vaccine, just because I think it's ridiculous. Like I shouldn't be forced to. Let's actually do tests on this stuff, make sure it works, all that sort of thing. So it's crazy how much people, Chad hits it nail on the head. People become sheep.
This is the one that we could pop up. There's a colorful language in the chat today. Love the engagement, though, folks. Thanks for joining us here.
Right.
Yeah, common sense is not so common. Jason, let's go back to the point here, because this kind of ties into it's more fake news, it's mind control. Dr. Drew mentioned the fact that he's now questioning what about legacy media. And I like that term, legacy media. I'm good with corporate media or state media. It's all kind of the same thing, but it's not mainstream media. So we got to stop using that term. But now he's wondering, how long have they been lying to us? And that is such a powerful question to ask yourself. What do I believe that's probably not true because I've accepted legacy media's narrative for, X amount of years? And what is he, 60, 70 years old?
Right.
I think it's fair to wonder that he's been lied to his entire life, which is insane to think about.
Well, and it's what's ridiculous too, because we've talked about this on the show, but I remember growing up and thinking to myself, holy cow, why is it every time we need to go blow up a country that's sitting on a ton of oil? Like, something is just corrupt there. And I grew up poor, and they would take folks like us and they would send me over to the desert to go get killed. And arms makers make millions of dollars. There's some back end business model with the oil. There's something going on, but it's like everybody was always like, oh yeah, let's go have another war. And I'm like, why do we keep sticking our nose in the Middle East and blowing things up? And then you send poor white folks like me to go die. And when you said that, you weren't a patriot, you were a traitor, you were all those things. And now I think people are starting to see the game where they're like, oh, this is just crazy.
Yeah, the mindset towards joining the military, I don't think anyone looks down on soldiers. This is not 1970. This is not where you spit on people for coming home and calling them baby killers. I have the utmost respect for the individuals that sign up to, that either enlist or become officers and serve their country because they think they're doing the right thing. It's the military establishment. It's the brass. It's the MIC. It is our commander-in-chief and all of the civilian leaders here that are sending these kids to the meat grinder for no other reason than to enrich themselves and enrich their buddies. Because at this point, it's hard to look at a war and say that this is justified. Our engagement in Eastern Europe, in the Middle East, there's nothing about defending America or defending American principles or promoting democracy or however they frame this up. It is simply getting young men and women killed. And Jason, we just had that incident last week where 3 service members and 3 were killed, 25 were injured because they're over in Syria or Jordan doing goodness knows what, but they got killed. Why? Why did they lose their lives? Why are their families now suffering for their loss?
Yeah, and we have the utmost respect for military. One of our sponsors, Split Rock Coffee, run by disabled vets. Go to splitrockcoffee.com, use promo code Todd10. Giddy up. Great coffee, great guys. But the people who are serving in the military are not the people running the military. Those are people that are bought and paid for by the military industrial complex, who their interest is driving the bottom lines. They love when we get into new wars because they get rich. It's just that simple. And as we go into this week, when we talk about mind control, Todd, we're gonna hit the third rail.
Here we go.
Here we go. So we're from Minnesota. Minnesota's crazy. Minnesota is insane. And we have one of the worst members of the House of Representatives in serving, Ilhan Omar. There have been exposés done about her from local media about how she got to this country. Her brother, allegedly, they committed some sort of weird stuff to get him citizenship. The whole thing's nuts, right? And if you criticized Ilhan Omar, Todd, what is somebody going to say about you?
Well, it's kind of having all that armor, just like Barack Obama had. So, but she gets the woman card too. But you are a racist because she is a practicing Muslim. You are now an Islamophobe, and where there's no speculation about Obama's religion, she is a Muslim that we know. So you're an Islamophobe if you go after her. You're a sexist. You're a bigot. Why aren't you more tolerant, white Minnesota? You should be electing these congresswomen of color because that's the right and progressive thing to do. And Jason, it really makes me dislike Minnesotans so much because we're a really good people up here. We are nice people, but my goodness, are we stupid and naive sometimes? And we think we're saving humanity by electing someone like her because she's an outsider. And we've had our turn as white people. And it is just god awful up here. Minnesota is going to quickly replace California, Illinois, and New York, I think, because we are that progressive. And people don't appreciate how much flyover country up here is miserable. But Ilhan Omar might be one of the worst. AOC is stupid. Eric Swalwell is stupid. They have terrible ideas, but Ilhan Omar is actively conspiring against this country in favor of somebody else.
Right. And it's funny too, because how can I say it? You can't talk about it because she checks all the boxes. And if you do talk about it, you're an Islamophobe, you are racist, like you can't criticize somebody.
Or you're a conspiracy theorist, which they really like to use that word now. We covered a couple of weeks ago, and our Substack had it up, how Minnesota's new state flag closely resembled that of Somalia, and there was a lot of speculation about why. It's really convenient that Minnesota is adopting so many thousands of Somali refugees that Ilhan Omar is one of the most powerful people in Congress. And now our state flag has the same colors and patterns and shapes as multiple flags in Somalia. If you believe that there are coincidences in politics, come talk to me after the show here. But that's where we're at right now.
Right. And so Ilhan Omar, and this ties into our episode from a week or two ago when we talked about immigration. Fundamentally, Todd and I think most of our audience love legal immigrants. These are people that are in another country and they look at what the USA has to offer, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, all those things, and they love it. And they say, hey, we're coming to America because we want to be part of that. We're going to apply. We're going to fill out the paperwork. We're going to learn.
We're going to tell you why you need us here or you should want us here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're not just saying we want to show up.
Yeah.
We're demonstrating why you want us.
And guess what? If you check the boxes, I want you here too. In fact, let's start doing trades, Jason. You can send your cat hair, blue hair, cat lady, blue hair, whatever she looks like. I will trade you. I'll take one of your immigrants and you can take this lunatic.
Absolutely. And why do we like legal immigrants? Because they work hard to get here. They land and all they want is opportunity, just like all of our ancestors. Land of opportunity. That's why you show up. Not the land of free stuff, land of opportunity. And you forsworn your allegiance to other nations and said, I used to be Italian or German or whatever. I give up that and I want to make America the best it can be. So if I'm coming into your country, my focus is on making your country the greatest, because this is where I'm going to set down my roots. This is where I'm going to raise my family, build my legacy, that sort of thing. So Ilhan Omar, since she got here, for those who don't know, she came as a refugee from Somalia, a war-torn country. She came here, landed in Somali community. We paid for housing, schooling, all that sort of stuff for her. We saved her. For those who don't know what's going on in Somalia, really rough. Third world country, lots of wars, lots of people dying.
Imagine the worst thing that a young girl could go through. We saved her from that.
Right. And one would think Ilhan Omar would have a red, white, and blue tattooed on her forehead, and she would be the most patriotic American, and she would be doing everything she could to help make America great. And even if she has different ideas or different feelings, she would still be like, I love America. But you know what? Ilhan Omar wasn't like that. Ilhan Omar hates America, hates what we stand for, thinks we're a bunch of racists and bigots. And that is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. If you don't love America, you're free to go. Go ahead and leave if you're not going to work to make this country great. But we had always speculated that Ilhan Omar was not trying to make America great. She was trying to make America divided and divisive. And then, Todd, video dropped this week.
We love video evidence, don't we, Jason?
We love video evidence. Ilhan Omar addressing a group of Somalis at an event in her district.
In her native language. Let's take a listen.
This is in her native language, so you got to read the subtitles. We may pause it and kind of read a couple so those listening can get the gist of it. Fired up.
Annaga haddii aan nahay dad Soomaali ah, waxaan nahay dad isjecel. Waa laga yaabaa meelaha qaarkood inaan isku xagxaganno, laakiin haddii runtii ay imaato waxaan nahay dad isku tashto, dad walaalo ah, dad dhiig lah, dad isku og inay Soomaali yihiin, inay Muslim yihiin. All
right, so I got to stop it there. So for those reading along, she's addressing Somalis. She's talking about, we kill each other, but we really love each other. We're of the same blood. And then she said a powerful line. She said, we are Somalis first, Muslims second, who protect one another and come to each other's aid and the aid to other Muslims too. Does this sound like American to you, Todd?
Does any of this, forget the fact that she's not speaking English and she's speaking to a group of Somalis in Minnesota. Whatever language she's using, that's less relevant to the fact that what she is saying with that language is aberrant. It is, there's no excuse for how she is framing this conversation. She doesn't care about America. She's obviously using us as a vessel to achieve her ends. And Jason, do you know when she got called out by everyone, do you know what she pinpointed on and pushed back? It just came up in the subtitle too, because the translation was Somalian. You can go on her Twitter profile and she says, actually, guys, it's not Somalian, it's Somali. That's the takeaway. That's how she defended the speech here, is that you translated how we call ourselves incorrectly. Not that my ideas were wrong or that I hate this country. It's that I'm a Somali, not a Somalian.
Well, yeah, and let's think about that for a sec. If you come out and say, I am a white person first and I support other white people, what's going to happen to you, Todd?
Well, there goes your career. Someone might just knock on your door, to be honest. That gets you to the gulags these days almost.
Right. And like I say, there's nothing wrong with loving your heritage, loving your faith, identifying as, hey, I'm a Muslim first. But this is a woman that does not like America. This is a woman that does not like her brethren. And she is encouraging this group to identify as a subset. But let's continue on.
isku hiiliya dadka walaalahoodna u hiiliya marka daraad markii ayaan dhaxdaas markii aan maqalnay in qaar Soomaali ah ama Soomaali sheegato in Ethiopia ay la galeen ma baqaan af Soomaali wixii lagu dhaho agreement heshiis Mahmoud Noor had aniga Soomaaliga badiyo soo ceeb ma aha.
She's using the white man's language. I don't know if that's okay.
Oh yeah.
And dad badan ay soo wacay oo waxay leeyihiin ilhaan dawladda Mareykanka inaan la hadashid waaye dawladda Mareykanka maxay ka qabanaysaa jawaabteedu waxay ahayd dawladda Mareykanka waxay ka qabanaysaa wixii annaga aan dhahno dawladda Mareykanka qabo waa kalsoonidaas inaan isku qabno annaga Soomaali haddii aan nahay.
Okay, guys.
Jason, I think we need to read this out loud for our non-video followers. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, or you're listening on audio in your car driving, she says, "My answer to the Somali government was that the U.S. government will only do what Somalis in the U.S. tell them to do." Okay, she is leveraging her position in the U.S. government to make sure Somalia gets what it wants. And she continues, "They will do what we want and nothing else. They must follow our orders, and that is how we will safeguard the interest of Somalia." Jason asked the question earlier, does this sound like someone who has American interests first? Is this someone that deserves to have your vote and serve in Congress?
I'll go a step further. Why are you here? Why do we let you in our country, let you be citizenships, partake in the American dream, the American journey, if your allegiance is with your foreign land? This is the antithesis of this is the opposite of what we're looking for in immigrants. And we see this with people on the southern border. These people aren't showing up to make America better. These people are here to do something, help move the needle in their home country. Let's continue with Ilhan Omar.
Wadankan anaga ku nool wadankan wadankii aan anaga tax ka dhiibna waaye waa wadankii gabar idin waa wadankii dad isjecel.
Oh wait.
Waa laga yaabaa joogo wadanka Soomaaliya biyaheeda dad kaleeta iyo badda Congress joogo.
Stop on that one line.
Congress ka fadhiso Congress ka waa wadankii gabar idinka dhalatayne Congress ka fadhiso intii aniga aan Congress joogo wadanka Soomaaliya biyaheeda dad kaleeta iyo baddeeda dad kale ma qaadanayaan wadanka Mareykankana kuma taageerayo dad kaleeta in anaga ayna.
All right, I got to stop at this one here. So folks, I'm going to read this translation out as well. Sleep in comfort, she's telling her Somali audience, knowing I am here to protect the interests of Somalia from inside the U.S. system. Jason, I don't have the definition of treason or sedition pulled up right now. I don't know if I need to. This is bordering on... the death penalty is on the books. I am not advocating for the death penalty for Ilhan Omar. At the very least, she can go back to Somalia and do whatever she wants to do over there. She has no business being in the United States at this point.
Right. And if you're watching this, especially we got a lot of viewers from Minnesota because we're from there, friends, family, whatever. George asked a great question. How is this POS still in the country? That's the exact question, George. I got a bigger question, though. How is this not the lead story on every local news broadcast in Minnesota? And that's because they don't want you to see or hear this, folks. That's why it's important you like, comment, share the show, and support people doing work like us and other people that are doing this work, because this is disqualifying. Disqualifying. Let's see more. She doesn't stop there.
Marka taas ka seexda reer Minnesota gabadhii Congress-a u dirsateen way idinka war haysaa sidaad idinka u dareemaysiin dantaas ay u dareemeen.
I apologize for pausing this so much. There's so much to this, though, Jason, that we need to focus on all of it, because like you said, this should be the lead story. She says, I'm concerned as much about you guys as, I'm concerned as you are for Somalia, implying that everyone in that space, and Jason, I don't know the percentages, but how many of Minnesota's Somali refugees share her viewpoint? Sometimes I wonder that it's awfully high. How many of the people here take advantage of our system? They get flown over for free. And Jason, we should probably do an episode on NGOs and Catholic charities and how federal money funds all of these organizations that ship these people over. They fly them back home. So Jason, I worked in St. Cloud, Minnesota for a couple of years. I worked with Somali population specifically. The amount of money flowing into these people's pockets to not only come here, and then chain migration allows every relative of theirs to come join them, but then we would fly them back to Somalia once a year. So I had a bunch of students up there who just disappeared for 6 months because mom and dad were given a plane ticket to go back. Most of the white families and black families in St. Cloud, Minnesota cannot afford to go on international travel trips once or twice a year. But the U.S. government made sure that our Somali refugees got a chance to fly every chance they wanted to. I don't know, because I don't want to speculate. Maybe a lot of people appreciate being here, but the amount of people here just to take advantage of what we offer, but care not a whit about it, is very disturbing.
Absolutely. Let's continue.
Madaxweyne Xasan Sheekhna waxaan leeyahay waan kugu faraxsanahay shaqada fiican aad qabatay in dadka Soomaaliya iyo dadka meel kasta ku nool aad dareensiisay si kasta anaga aan u dhibanahay Soomaali hadii aan nahay waxaan nahay dad karti leh dad wadankooda aqoonsan dad wadankoodii.
People who love their country, Somalia.
It's not the United States, parenthetically. It is we love Somalia.
And these are all people in America with taxpayer-funded services that are pledging their allegiance to their homeland.
And wiligood danger laga gelin karin. Marka waxaan reer Minnesota iyo Soomaalida meel kasta ku nool adeerkaya hadda mar dhow ka hadlaayay idinkaga hambalyeynaya sida aad iskugu wada duuban tihiin sida aad kulligiin u garab istaagteen madaxweynaheena because wuu u baahan yahay in kulligeen aan garab istaagno. Soomaaliya waa
I'm stopping it here because I don't know, for those who can't read it, Somalia is for Somalis only, as over 45% of Somali's population are not even ethnic Somalis. So here is the same congresswoman that calls you a racist and you a bigot for saying America is for Americans, understanding we'll let you in if you want to accept America as your country. We don't care where you came from. Here she's not saying like more people are welcome in Somalia. No. If you're not from Somalia, you're not welcome in Somalia.
Make it make sense. And again, Jason, it's never hypocrisy. It is hierarchy. They know exactly what they are doing when they say white man bad if you don't want immigration, and while having no issue whatsoever saying, nope, Somalia is for Somalis only.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
Patrick. Great question, Patrick. How is this not being reported everywhere? Patrick, this should be the lead story right now. Omar should be gone tomorrow. Congress should have a special session to say, you're out of here. And I tweeted earlier, Santos was expelled for reasons. Do you think Santos did worse than Omar right here? And we have more documentation. We have more videos of Omar coming up in just a second. This is not as bad as it gets either.
Yeah, I was going to say, we saw Patrick Click. We're both kind of like, that's exactly our point. People ask us why we do these podcasts, because we are fighting against the regime. There are millions of people in America. Every Minnesota citizen should see this. It should be the front page of the Star Tribune, the Pioneer Press. Frankly, it should be, there's a bigger story here too, because this is not the only immigration group that finds themselves in this situation. And guys, this story gets worse.
Somalia waa hal walaalaan wada nahay dhulkeena lagama kala qaybsanayo dhulal baa naga maqan raadsanaynaa insha Allah maalinta laakiin
I got to stop it again, Jason. Every single thing she says. So Ethiopia and Kenya have been stolen, continue to occupy the Somalia region state. So I think maybe some translations wrong there. But she's concerned about what belongs to Somalia. Do you realize that's the exact same language we use? Like, what's left of America if we have an open border and 10 million people come across it during the Biden administration? No. You're a racist and a bigot and a xenophobe if you want to preserve America. But by golly, Somalia, it's only for Somalis. And by the way, we can't have other people stealing our land and coming here.
Oh my God, can you imagine if President Trump gave this speech? And what was that dude at the beginning here? Daniel Manafort, the guy who hates Trump. Can you imagine if Trump gave this same speech, but he said America instead of Somalia?
I think Daniel's head would be on fire. He would be so upset because Joy Reid and all these other pundits on television would say, you need to be mad, Daniel, because Trump's a racist. And this is how we know because he said this. Where's Daniel's outrage right now? Because it's a Somali woman of color who's a Democrat, and, fill in the blanks. She checks all the right boxes for Daniel, probably tickles him in the right places. So he's not upset about this. Right.
And shout out to Mr. Yost, my English teacher, who's, I guarantee hasn't made it this far on the podcast, but he's from Minnesota too, I think, unless he moved out of state. Like, this is insanity. Continuing on.
lama kala qaybinayo marka waa mahadsantihiin dhammaantiin sidaad ii sharaftiin oo markasta aad iigu soo dhawaysiin ilaahay idin sharfo.
Okay. She said one more thing, Jason, and then let's move on to the next video. All right. The comments are hot. Thank you, Pata. Exile her butt, revoke her citizenship. Amen. She talked about, as a sitting congresswoman in the United States, speaking in the United States, about how we need to protect Somalia getting having incursions over there. I was trying to find an adjective. I don't think that exists, so I had to use the verb. She wants to use our power to go protect a foreign country. We have heard this before. And why aren't we upset about this? Is that working in Ukraine? Did it work in Vietnam? Did it work in Iraq, Afghanistan? Like the last 50 years, wherever the military has gone, it's been a disaster. But I kind of get a sense that she's saying, no, U.S. might. We will defend Somalia.
Right. And this video should be disqualifying. I mean, I'm not saying kick her out of the House of Representatives. I mean, it's time for you to go home. And all those people that are in that crowd, and America has freedom of speech, so I'm not saying you're not free to speak, but you are here on our good graces because you signed up for the American dream. You signed up to make our country great. We did not allow you into this nation to go fix your country. If you wanted to fix your country, go to your country and go fix your country. Luis, you hit the nail on the head. Send her there. How many? They use race card to cover for this BS. Exactly.
Yep.
And you're being programmed by the mainstream media because I guarantee this is new information for virtually everybody that's watching this podcast.
And Jason, don't forget, this just came to my mind here. I think it was Donald Trump when he was president that said to Omar specifically, go back to your country and fix it, and then come back here and appreciate America a little bit more. I need to get the exact quote, but I believe she has been directed by Trump before to go fix Somalia and then come back here and see how good life is.
Yeah. And this is crazy. And I mean, you guys can see the date on this video. This just happened. this just happened and this wasn't reported. But now we got to go to the second video because, they might say, oh, that was just a political speech. She was just getting her supporters riled up. Oh, that she didn't really mean it. Well, now that she said this stuff, people have been digging in to what else has Ilhan Omar said, which this should be disqualifying in itself. But this is her back last year or 2 years ago now, 2022. She is in Somalia giving this speech.
In jidadkeennii aan wada dhisano, anigu waan ahay gabar Mareykanka laga doortay oo Kongresska Mareykanka ku jirto. Laakiin waxaan ahay gabar Soomaaliyeed, gabar idinku jinsi ah, gabar idinku af ah, gabar idinku diin ah oo hadde qof iyadoo da'yar wadankeedii laga kaxeeyay wili xiise.
Now I got to stop this. For those who didn't see, she said, I was a young girl who was taken from her country that misses her countries and wishes to live there. No. You were from a refugee camp that got brought to America to save your damn life. You were not, like, we didn't come over and kidnap you. And then you committed immigration fraud, reportedly, for the fact checkers, to get your brother here. We are 100% okay if you go home. You no longer need to live under the oppression of America.
And nothing is stopping her. She says she misses her country and wishes to live there. Then go do it.
Right.
Jason, should we start a GoFundMe for Ilhan Omar and get her some plane tickets? Maybe even send her first class. Say, enjoy your last trip out of the States.
Absolutely. Revoke your citizenship. And this gets worse.
Wili xiise u qabto in maalin wadankeedii ay ku noolaato oo dadkeedii wax ay la wadaagto. Marka alxamdulilah waxaan rajaynayaa aniga iyo ilmahayga in aan hadde ku barbaariyo iyagana ilmahooda ay ku barbaariyaan dhulkii aniga aan ku soo koray.
I'm hoping I can raise my kids in the country and my kids can raise their kids. Omar, you can go there today.
Then go do it.
Go do it.
Taasna haddii ay suurtagelayso waa hadda shaqo badan inaan wada qabanaa hadduu Ilaahay yiraahdo oo aan ka dhignaa dhulkeena dhul barwaaqadiisa dadka oo dhan ay dareemi karaan oo ay arki karaan oo ay ka wada faa'iideysan karaan.
All right, we're doing a lot of pausing here. She acknowledges that Somalia is just an S-hole right now. It is war-torn. It's divided up by all these warlords. It's dangerous. Whose fault is that? I mean, I haven't heard her blame white people yet for Somalia's demise, but doesn't it rub you the wrong way, Jason, that she won't address the elephant in the room, says maybe there's something our people need to fix if this country is going to get better here. Maybe instead of the U.S. military or the U.S. economy or the U.S. bailing our country out, maybe our people should look inward and say something is not going correctly. Maybe it's our belief system. It's our value system. God forbid you suggest it's their fired up religion that always wants to conquer. There are a lot of things that could make Somalia better without any U.S. involvement whatsoever, but I don't hear her saying that quite yet. She's not connecting all the dots.
Right. Continuing on. Or is that the end of the clip?
No.
Yeah, that was a shorter one, but folks, you get the general idea here. So the first video we showed, she's speaking to her Somali population saying the U.S. has your back. We will make Somalia better because of my involvement in the U.S. government, almost like a mole or a rat. And then in this last clip here, she keeps telling you that she wants to move back to Somalia because that's her homeland. That's the place she loves. That's where she wants to raise kids. But she's still here.
She is not. Well, first she was rescued, like charities. They moved them from refugee camps over to Minnesota. And it's funny at the time when I said, do these guys even want to be here? And people call me a racist. Why do you want the Somalis here? Well, because it's like, if they want to be in Somalia, let them stay in Somalia. You know what I mean? If they want to come over here and they want to adopt and be part of America, we'd love to have them. She clearly doesn't. Ilhan Omar, go home.
And she has never wanted to be here. So as Minnesotans, we probably know too much about her, but it's a good thing, I guess. From day one, as a high school student and college student, she's had these same radical views. She has never once spent a day saying, thank you for this opportunity. It has been from the get-go. I am on a mission to work my way up, use that power, and then return all those favors to Somalia. It's never once been about being grateful for being an American.
Right. Folks, I hope as we kind of round the bend here that you guys, your blood is boiling as much as mine is. And I hope you're mad at Ilhan Omar, but I hope you're madder at our government and our media for letting this happen. And the media should be screaming about this. This should not be two guys with a few thousand people across some platforms watching this show yelling about this. This should be on CNN, and they should be like, oh my God, this person clearly doesn't love America. They clearly don't want to be part of America. Why don't they go home? And that's what she's saying. But now we got to get to the next story, Todd, which we came across this week. And this one is one of the biggest psyops ever. This is January 6th. So we will have to be a little careful with some of the things we say about January 6th on some of the platforms. Got a lot of people watching on Facebook and YouTube that you got to watch what you're saying. So January 6th, people stormed the Capitol. If we go back to our friends at the beginning, said Donald Trump's a traitor, that's because they tried to overthrow the government through an insurrection. How did he form that opinion? Well, the media told him. And here's how the conversation goes with these folks. If you're like, really, if they tried to overthrow the government, there's 100,000 people there, why didn't they bring guns? And Todd, their answer will be, well, they did bring guns. And you'll say, well, yeah, they found like 10 guns in like 200,000 people. Like there's more than that at the local bar I go to on a Friday night.
And what were they going to do? Jason, let's say they did storm the Capitol and get it. What was their next step? Does anyone really think the U.S. government was at risk of getting overthrown, even if they got in the Capitol and stayed there and kicked everyone else out? Is that something like, oh, you got us. Okay, here's the government. It's all yours. Like, do you really think that this was a threat?
No. And anybody who thinks that is an idiot. Now, what happened January 6th was terrible. The people that assaulted law enforcement, they deserve to be charged. And they deserve to be treated like every other American citizen who assaults law enforcement, which we just saw illegal migrants this week in New York assault police officers. They got let out 24 hours later. So all the January 6th people that assault the police officers, treat them by the same standard as New York, they should all be out. There's still thousands of people rotting in jail 2 years later. But to seal the deal on this, we had to put the January 6th committee together. And the January 6th committee was interesting because they said it's a special hearing and it's a congressional committee. And that is horrible manipulation because they're making it sound like it's a hearing or a trial. Both sides will present their case. They're trying to say that Republicans and Democrats will both be represented on this committee to really flush out what happened. They released 10, 12 minutes of 40,000 minutes of footage. And then they played it on loop. They played it in prime time. They played it over and over and over until people got brainwashed to see something they didn't see. And you can share with them. I've shared with friends of mine. They're like, it's an insurrection. Well, here's the other videos. Here's files with full video footage. And it was funny because I always knew it was a psyop. It was a brainwashing. It was all of those things. And you said that, and you were a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, rah, rah, rah. Todd, were you a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist?
From the beginning, Jason, I vividly remember when would it have been? So probably on the 7th, we're watching the news over at a friend's house, and this anti-Trump guy says, can you believe what happened? And he's totally bought into the narrative. And I said on January 7th already, like, this is not happening. No Trump protest has ever resulted in this chaos. There has to be another explanation. Sure enough, Jason, it comes out later. The Fed had people implanted in the crowd, and they won't admit how many. We've had certain people, and I'm not going to name names because it seems like they want to come get you if you name him, but a provocateur of sorts that was accused of being a Fed the night before on January 5th. No one really had an interest in him, even though he was on the FBI's wanted list for a little bit and then suddenly disappeared. There were a lot of questions. And then what were they going to do? When they got in there, it seems like they were peacefully praying in the Senate chamber room. You can't necessarily do that, but is it a crime to put your feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk? And Jason, we've covered before how they had to reference the Sarbanes-Oxley Act to get people thrown in jail. because you're interrupting an official proceeding here. They had to go out of their way to find the most obscure legislation possible to say, oh, it's a crime.
Yeah, so anybody who actually can complete a rational thought can say, yeah, this is a protest that got out of hand. Yeah, there's some people that deserve to go to jail. Nobody's condoning, storming the gates of the Capitol. And it happens far more often than we'd like. But then they went into this mass media brainwashing operation with the January 6th committee. And then you're like, okay, we know this is crap, and we know they put this together to spin a narrative. So we've got a clip here to play. So these are from PBS and Frontline. And these are clips.
Not right-wing outlets.
Not right-wing outlets. They voted for Joe Biden. And we just got to play this clip that takes what they were saying in these documentaries and puts it in excellent perspective.
Thompson's committee had gathered a trove of information. The challenge, what to do with it.
The one thing that we knew was the information that we have is compelling. The thing we needed to do was tell that to the American people in a compelling way. So that's why we brought in a former president of ABC News.
Yeah, I got a call pretty much out of the blue from the January 6th committee. They wanted a storyteller. And while
I think you and I wanted to stop it at the exact same time. That's perfect. They wanted a storyteller. Kinzinger said we needed to make a compelling story to tell the American people. Folks, if they really cared about truth and they trusted you, they would say, here is the information. You come to your own conclusions. But they never did that. They hired a television producer from the beginning to say, here is the selective information we want to present to the American people. Help us craft our narrative to make it as strong as possible so that you believe that it was an insurrection. That is all that happened here. And they are telling you that themselves.
Correct. Let her roll.
they were brilliant lawyers. Storytelling for a mass audience is not what they do.
To bring in a guy like this who would think outside the box really did prove to be fruitful. And it was Goldston who really began to envision this as, in a way, a kind of mini-series, that there would be, sort of 9 episodes, and that these episodes would tackle particular themes.
Attack on the Capitol, the investigation.
The first hearing was primetime.
I had to stop there. You see how that's framed up? Attack on the Capitol and investigation. They're trying to present this like they were actually digging into it. No, folks, they are telling you a story. They're spinning fiction. They're taking some things that happened and spinning it in a way that weak-minded people are going to fall for it. Moving on.
Television.
As the nation is about to witness a defining moment, the first hearing before the country, the results of the January 6th investigation.
This is an extraordinary moment in American history.
When it came to that first hearing, we knew how high the stakes were.
Is about to hold its first primetime hearing.
We were either going to, make people realize that this was important, or once you've lost them, you've lost them for good.
On the evening of June 9th, 8:01 p.m., the doors opened. My heart was beating pretty fast on June 9th. And it was a real question of, is this going to work or not?
All right, everybody.
Is it going to work to lie to the American people in such a way that they believe your lies? I think that's what he was getting at.
Well, right. And notice they're framing this as the investigation or a hearing. Nobody's here saying, let's prevent facts, countervailing facts. Maybe there's more to this story. Will this brainwashing work?
And Jason, they made a comment about how they needed a television producer because they had good legal minds. They were all trained lawyers. Far be it from me to wonder, wouldn't a lawyer and wouldn't a courtroom allow for competing evidence to be presented? And you say, here is my presentation of the facts as I understand them. And here comes the other side. Let's take Trump's side, for example. Here is my presentation of the evidence as I understand it. And why don't we come to a conclusion based on that preponderance of evidence here? Nothing about this hearing resembled any legal matter that you've ever been a part of here. And that's why they had a producer, because they didn't care about a legal proceeding or actually getting to the truth or getting to the bottom of what happened. They needed you to believe that Trump was an insurrectionist and led an insurrection. That is all January 6th was.
Huzzah.
Here we go. 5 on the line, please.
I'm in this tiny control room right up the stairs from Cannon Caucus. And we count down to the start of the hearing. And at that point, what can you do?
Here we go.
I love how he calls it a hearing.
In 3, 2, 1.
The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol will be in order. Without objection.
We wanted to
order. January 6th attack on the United States Capitol.
You do.
Here, 3, 2, 1.
The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack.
Notice he says investigate again. He is lying. There's nothing in here that's an investigation. They have scripted all this out with a Hollywood producer. This is not an investigation.
This is a television show, folks. This is not a committee hearing in Congress. This is like turning on Netflix and picking out a show to watch. This is no different.
Right.
On the United States Capitol will be in order. Without objection.
We wanted to make sure that this was a presentation that would grab the audience and hold on to them. Chairman Thompson loved to say, it's got to pop.
A presentation that will grab a hold of them. That's the end of the video. There's tons more to this. Folks, I got to say, if you're a lefty and you believe January 6th was as awful as they said, and you can suspend your belief that, you know, maybe these people who walked around the Capitol and prayed weren't insurrectionists. Yeah, you did see people get violence with police. Let's prosecute those. We can all agree on that. But you just saw in their own words from the committee, this wasn't a hearing that you watched. This was a mini series designed to be mind control and manipulate you. And if you don't understand that, I don't know what to say.
And that's why we title it, it's more than fake news at this point. They're not just making stuff up for fun or because they're wrong. It's intentional, and it's to get your mind to operate in a certain way and think in certain terms. And that's all it is. It is a massive psyop. It is propaganda. Jason, I wonder if Daniel is still here because there's so many questions about January 6th. I wonder if he remembers that Officer Brian Sicknick was hit with a fire extinguisher on January 6th, for example. Or if he knows that 4 people died on January 6th, or it might be 5, actually. Would he know that they were all protesters and none of them were police?
Right. Yeah, it's absolutely remarkable. And if a mainstream news media participated in this, the people you trust to help tell you what's going on participated in this sham. And if it was as bad as they said it was, they wouldn't have to do this. And think of it from a different perspective. The U.S. government paid millions of dollars to a Hollywood producer to call something a hearing and an investigation when it clearly wasn't, to present. I mean, it's almost like a campaign finance violation. Like, this is being framed in a way specifically to advantage Democrats politically. The U.S. government paid for this. Everybody watching this show, if you're a U.S. taxpayer, you paid for them to hire a Hollywood producer to run an extended miniseries to make half the country hate MAGA and think we're insurrectionists.
And tell MAGA, don't even think about organizing again, because we'll infiltrate that organization as well and frame you up in a different way. So not only does it put Trump in the spotlight here, but it's a message to all future Trump rallies or Trump protests or MAGA protests that want to get together in a big crowd, and they might think to themselves, what is going to happen here if I show up today? So it is absolutely a threat and a warning to future involvement.
Yeah, and I got to say, like, raise your hand in the chat if you've ever commented about January 6th and your fellow Americans. It's almost like COVID, where they were wanting to throw you in the gulag and do unkind things to you if you didn't think you need to be vaccinated. If you think January 6th was an insurrection, there are many people. If Mr. Yost is still watching, he he would be completely fine with me being thrown in a gulag because I don't believe that January 6th was going to overthrow the government.
And he would do it
Protest,
to
riot,
defend
whatever you want to call
democracy.
it.
He would do it to defend for your freedom, Jason. You have to go to prison for freedom.
Right. And now, Todd, we might need to go a couple minutes long because we've black-pilled you guys. We've black-pilled you. The media's lying to you. The government's lying to you. Hopefully you got the message why it's important to like and share. But I want to real quick show a little video clip of John Fetterman. And for those who don't follow us, we have been super critical of John Fetterman. He has terrible ideas for the country. He's a goof. Like, he had a stroke, shouldn't have been serving, all those things. But since he's come back to the flow, Todd, it's been delightful because we say part of what's going to save this country is when you get normal Democrats. Like, I have friends that are normal Democrats. They think taxes should be higher than I do. They think we should have a little more public assistance. They're not communists or Marxists. They put America first. And for those who aren't following John Fetterman on social media, he has come out with some crazy right-wing stances. It's amazing.
And Jason, I just want to point to, we always say that if you have a Twitter presence or a Facebook presence, usually the intern is writing that stuff, but it's been remarkable to watch Fetterman, who had these other tweets before and they were very coherent. So we're like, that can't be him. But when he came back from the hospital, the rhetoric changed. It's like, did he direct his interns to do that? Or did he take over? Because not only is he saying the right thing, all of his social media is saying the right thing too, all of a sudden. And it is glorious. We have been so critical of Fetterman because he couldn't even speak. But since he came back from the hospital and his brain started working, he sounds exactly like this. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it's almost like it's better than having Oz in the Senate at this point if he keeps it up.
Yeah, it's funny. So to kind of frame up this clip, so pro-Palestine protesters went to John Fetterman's house. And right now, if you're on the left, it's really hard to be not pro-Palestine. If you're pro-Israel, things are really tough. And there's only so much we can say on some of these platforms about our opinions of the thing. But they went to his house to protest, which is a signal if you're a lefty, you take the knee, and I'm not going to say anything. But Todd, what did John Fetterman do?
One of the best trolls you could imagine here. And I love that he has this, I'm not going to say, but he has the flag, the Israeli flag, in his house so that he can wave it. Take a look at this, folks.
Fetterman, you can't hide! You're supporting genocide! Fetterman, you can't hide! You're supporting genocide! Fetterman, you can't hide! You're supporting genocide! Fetterman, you can't hide! You're supporting genocide!
All right, and then they pan down to the audience. It's like 10 lunatics out there. It's a really small gathering. He probably didn't have to address them at all because they're such meaningless individuals, but he did, and he waved the Israeli flag right back at them, and then they can't do anything about it. It was awesome.
Yeah, so think of that. The protesters go to his house. You see the police lights and stuff going there, and John Fetterman, instead of taking the knee, he goes onto the roof and starts waving the Israeli flag. And folks, that's what we need in America. We need people that are going to stand up, especially people on the left. People who can say, it's okay to be on Israel's side in the war. It's okay to not want to be a communist. All those things are okay. And if we get those Democrats understanding putting America first is not bad, condemn Ilhan Omar. Nobody should be supporting what she's saying. If we can get there, folks, we're going to save this country.
Yeah, and honestly, stop being afraid of what the names are going to call you. Do I care that someone's going to say, Todd, you're a racist because you think Ilhan Omar should go to Somalia? I don't care what you think, because if that's your mindset, you are not worth listening to at all. You are the problem, and I have no problem telling that to you. Omar needs to go. Fetterman's a hero for what he did. These things are so obvious. You got lied to about January 6th. Folks, if you're watching the show, we appreciate it. I know you're right there with us, but it's going to take us sharing this message with so many more people to get them to wake up as well.
Absolutely. And with that, Todd, we should probably wrap up. We went a little long, folks. Sorry. We got pretty fired up this episode, Todd. What do you think?
I find myself getting fired up a lot. I don't know about you, Jason, but the stories are getting so insane because it has to ratchet up. And we've had this conversation before. You can't just call Trump a racist like in 2015 because people are desensitized to that. So all the rhetoric around Trump has to change to get stronger. I feel like we're that way in the news cycle now too, because okay, we've seen all these lies before. So the lies and the outrage from people like Omar are getting more and more egregious. I can't imagine 10 years ago someone like Omar would get away saying that. And now it's like the media doesn't even care. So we are in a much different place now.
And just to put things in perspective, folks, between now and election, it's going to get crazier. I mean, for those, follow us on Twitter. I'm at JRob from MN. Todd, you're
Tamtrib is the best way to describe it. TAMTRIB.
Yeah, search for Todd Peterson. I retweet him a lot. So if you find me, you can find him too. But like in New York, illegal immigrants assaulted a police officer. And then we were putting them up in a hotel, giving them food, giving them money. They assault the cop. They're out within 24 hours.
And if you watch the video, Jason, they're flipping the bird to the cameras. These guys know nothing's going to happen to them. And this is the same week that 150 Democrats in Congress voted against deporting illegals who are convicted of DUIs and other crimes.
And today it comes out that it's reported that they hopped a bus and headed to California. Gavin Newsom, we wrote a story on the AmericanTribune.com. Gavin Newsom was in a store and somebody was leaving, stealing, and he turns to the clerk and he goes, "Aren't you going to do something about that? Why are they paying, or why am I paying if he just gets to walk out?" And they're like, she's like, don't complain to me. I just work here. Go complain to the governor. He's the one telling him not to enforce the laws. And then the clerk looks up and, oh, you are the governor.
Give that Target employee a medal. Yeah. And Gavin Newsom, I think he's genuinely surprised that this happens. He has no idea that if you don't criminalize theft under $950, that there are going to be people out there with a new incentive to steal merchandise that's worth less than $950 because they know they can get away with it. My 3-year-old understands this concept, and he was blown away. He's like a deer in the headlights. Wait, you mean people are stealing?
Right. But that's why Todd and I do what we do at Freedom from the Press. Follow us at, we gave you our Twitter handles at theamericantribune.com and theamericantribune.news. That's our Substack. That's where we go into more detail on some topics like Epstein and things they don't want us to talk about. But we really appreciate your support, people that tune in. The one ask we have for everybody, share this content. And like I say it 1,000 times, share with somebody you might not politically agree with. I hope Doug Yost watched this episode. I really hope if he thinks I'm wrong about something, he reaches out and lets me know. But I hope at some point Doug Yost's brain goes off and goes, holy crap, maybe I am being lied to. Because that's how we save this country, folks.
You don't have to agree with everything we're saying, but meet us halfway and say you're not getting the truth. And again, we can agree on policies. That's what Republicans and Democrats used to do. But what you can't do is simply vote communist because CNN told you to.
Absolutely. All right. With that, folks, stay safe out there. We'll see everybody back next Friday.
Have a great weekend.